Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I am so honored to be joined by two all-stars of Cvent's own Meeting and Events department. Today, we are going to be diving into how our own experts are using Cvent technology to optimize events, curate attendee experience, collaborate with partners, and minimize attrition and use data and insights. So first off, let me introduce our panelists. We've got Kirsten Sargent, who is our lead of meetings and events. She is responsible for some of our most important programming, including our Cvent Connect trade show, our sponsorships, and our VIP and marquee experiences. Hi, Kirsten, welcome.
Hi, Janine. What a great intro. Thanks for really setting me up, but really excited to be here and talk to everyone today. And I know Rachel is really excited too.
Yeah, next up we have Rachel Andrews. She is Senior Director of our Meeting and Events program here at Cvent. She's 13 years in with Cvent, has grown the team from 3 to 4 people in different departments all the way to a power team of 30 that it is today. And she is a board member of Meeting Planners International. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, so excited to be here. Excited to talk to everybody today. Thanks for the great intro, Janine. We have a lot of good content to cover from all the great event products that we use to help our team be more efficient, but also working with our partners. So excited to chat about that.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start with you, Rachel? We're going to talk a little bit about venue sourcing and space planning, but first, why don't you just orient us to the types of events that Cvent does and a little bit more about your team?
Of course, yeah. So our team, we have a mighty team of 30. We're a global team, so we have planners in all sorts of regions. So we have a US team, we have a London team, and we have an India team. But we are broken up into a couple different sub-departments in our team. So this is not just a team of just event designers or just event planners. We have all sorts of different types of roles on our team, which is why our team is so mighty. And we're very blessed to have this many people on the team supporting the events that we do. Like any tech company, we're just kind of a little bit unique, right? We work for Cvent, but we also plan Cvent's events. So like any other tech company, we have an extensive events program. We do just about 1,000 events a year. And when people hear that number, it's like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize Cvent did that many, because they've probably heard of Cvent Connect, which is our marquee event in the US and in Europe. Those are obviously our biggest events that we do, but we do a lot of smaller events. So just to orient the folks on the team or on the webinar, we do a ton of different types of events. So we break it up into internal and external events. And internal events are obviously things like our company-wide meetings, our global town halls that we do, anything that we do within Cvent for our Cvent employees, morale programs, our incentive trips, things like that. So there's a ton of those, and we help support a lot of different initiatives that HR is producing, et cetera. So that's a big chunk of the things that we also support. External events, we do a ton of external events. So if you are a Cvent customer, we do a lot of Cvent customer events. We do trainings. We do a lot of lunch and learns where we discuss trends and topics, just to really get our technology out there, but also just help enable the folks that are using or maybe thinking about using Cvent in a way. Cvent is obviously a huge platform. We have a lot of different offerings. So the events kind of line up to those, because we want to make sure people aren't overwhelmed with it all. We want to make sure that we're training and teaching folks at the different events that we do. So externally, we do kind of 2 different branches of events. We have our hosted events, which are the ones that Cvent puts on, bringing you to lunch or an all-day seminar or an all-day customer success group or a happy hour or a networking event. We do a ton of events all over the world, and a lot of different styles of events where we really try to make sure that we're bringing thought leadership into our programs and also trainings. And then the second type of external event that we do are our attended events, which we go to about 250 trade shows a year. So our team is helping execute that. So there's a lot that we're producing across the board. Within the team, we have kind of 3 sub teams. We have the event design team that are responsible for the execution piece. We have our event analytics and operations team, which really help do the event marketing, the reporting, analytics, how we're performing, attendee generation. They're the ones doing all the fun copy and things like that. They're really behind the scenes executing on all the operational pieces. And then finally, we have our event tech team. We are lucky enough to use Cvent, working at Cvent. So we use pretty much the entire suite of products that Cvent uses, but we also need our event tech team to talk to all the other marketing technology that we use. So the whole MarTech stack is quite large. So our team not only does Cvent technology building and helping with that strategy, but then they also help work with our marketing operations team, our demand gen teams. They work across all the different teams to make sure that our events are running smoothly. So in a nutshell, that's what the team does, just for some level setting. But we do a ton of stuff here, and we don't sleep. It's great.
Well, I hope you do get some sleep, Rachel. But that is so interesting. So, I mean, just to recap a few points that I heard. So we have a team of about 30 people across the globe. We do 1,000 events a year, which is a combination of our internal events and then external attended events, external hosted events. And the event formats, it sounds like, are everything from a lunch and learn to, supporting our team attending an industry trade show, an internal, training or, internal meeting. And then of course our marquee event, Cvent Connect, which is coming up in June, and is, the Super Bowl of the events industry. So quite a variety of formats, of use cases, of purposes, of global regions. And it's so interesting to me that, event design is, of course, a core component of our team, but having a whole department geared towards both analytics and event tech. I'm VP of sales for our hospitality cloud, and I'm not sure, many of our venue partners realize how much investment goes into the analytics and the tech and essentially uniting an event program to make sure that we're able to report out to our leadership, the impact of our events.
Yeah, it's an important piece of it. I think when you're working with hoteliers, sometimes they just look at, the sourcing side of the planning team, and then obviously the on-site execution piece of it. But our team is so much more than that. We want to make sure that our events are successful because events are expensive. And if we're spending money on something that isn't working or people don't like it, we need to be looking at that survey data. We need to be looking at who's coming to our programs, make sure we're getting the right mix of people, et cetera. So that was really critical for me to build that into the team, just because our event design team, which Kirsten's on, they work so freaking hard to make sure that our events are successful from an execution and strategy standpoint. So having that extra support of somebody that's helping do the event marketing, helping talk them through, okay, this makes sense from an event tech standpoint. If you're doing X for this format of event, here's what we would recommend for the event tech side. So all 3 departments are working really, really closely together. We're all one concise team. It's just, we realized 5-6 years ago that we needed more than just your traditional event planner. We needed all those different functions within the team.
Yeah, it's so important to, justify the budget that we orient towards events. And, we know better than anyone being an event tech company, but, any organization, I'm sure, wants their events team to have that seat at the boardroom table and, and show the impact of their efforts.
Yeah.
On that note, though, let's talk about sourcing for a little bit. So what's important to you all? And maybe we can go to your Kirsten in terms of, finding venues that are going to help bring those dreams to life and create the attendee experiences that are going to be most impactful.
Yeah, so obviously we love to use the Cvent supplier network when we're doing our sourcing process. I think it's a great tool if you aren't already using it. Basically, you can put in all the information such as budget, sizing, where that you want to have the program, and it helps you narrow down the venues that are really specifically just tailored to those specific things, which really cuts down the sourcing time. So I know at least on our team, it's been really helpful to really cut down the time. And also with your budgeting, which is fantastic. They really make sure that if you put in, you have $200 per person or something like that for your budgeting, you can really focus on that to really stay within budget. So I think it's just a really great tool to be able to use for everyone.
Awesome. And I will say, so I've been with Cvent since 2007 when we were launching the supplier network. And one of the biggest things that we invest in is having the most comprehensive, up-to-date database of hotels and venues around the world, which is a lot harder than you would think to keep track of all of the changes in brands and openings and closures and things like that. So I think that it's a time saver, both from a building out your requirements, but also in, really just understanding the landscape of properties that you could do business with.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really nice, especially for those smaller, more unique venues too. I love that those are also on the supplier network too, because a lot of times you might not be able to find that just if you're doing a normal Google search. So I love that we also incorporate that. And it's not just your hotels, your convention centers, your conference centers, things like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Great to hear. Okay, so when let's say you build out an RFP, you source some venues and you're getting proposals back. What are you looking for in those proposals?
Rachel, you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. I think for us, like and this isn't new, but I feel like the trends these days are shorter booking windows, especially for the smaller meeting programs that are happening. So, and hotels, like on this webinar, I know you probably feel this pain, is the turnaround time that we're often faced with as planners is just really short. So we're looking for short responses, but also thorough. Another thing that I've found that hotels just are so busy, and we can commiserate with you on that too. I think we're all busy in the events industry, but a lot of times hotels will turn down our RFP without looking and seeing that we've marked that we are flexible with our dates. So just like not turning it down right away and actually like having a conversation before you do that. But the first things I kind of look for are, one, fundamentals. Are we going to fit in the space? Is it in a good location? What accessibility or sustainability initiatives do they have? That's pretty top of mind for us right now. But then also if they can offer any concessions or any sort of help on the AV side. We feel like there's a lot of, everything seems to be more expensive these days. I'm calling it like revenge revenue from when we had COVID. And so for us, it's like, what can we do to work together to make sure that this event will work well for us? Like sometimes venues will just respond with their all day package, and really we only need like 3 hours of a package or 1 hour of something. So just getting creative and digging into that. I also think it's on the planner's responsibility to say that in the RFP as well. So you're not having to be mind readers for all of our venues out there. So I think it's twofold, like making sure you're making a commitment to each other with on the planner side and on the supplier side of just having that conversation in CSN and saying, here's what we're really looking for. Here are the top 3 things that are most important to us. So if the planners can commit to doing that, then I think that the suppliers can give better responses. So it is on both ends. Like you have to put it out there and like make sure that the hotels know that they're a viable option for your program.
Yeah, so I think that's so important. Speaking on behalf of the venues in our audience, I think that, there's sometimes concern or frustration that the initial sourcing might be wider than, they would want to see in order to spend a lot of time curating a proposal, right? So it's good to hear that you first are making sure that the properties that you're soliciting have the space requirements that you need. And it sounds like, you're looking, of course, for availability, but there's some is there a bit of an iterative process, right? Like after you get back your initial availability, and I heard you, and let's double click on this, like make sure to check if the dates are flexible, right? Because I think that availability can be tight, and I've heard you say that you value when hotels are willing to work with you or venues on different date sets.
I think it depends. Like, I think sometimes when you're putting your RFP in and you fill things out, I'm filling out bare minimum stuff and then attaching an RFP to it. And so it's very clear to me when hotels don't click into the attachment and just respond to what's in the system. So like, I think it needs to be hand in hand there, Janine, a little bit. It needs to be like going that extra mile. But I also understand like we are sending it. So the booking windows are so short now for some, but then some other like associations are booking really far out, right? So corporate is booking very, very short, and association businesses in the industry are booking really far out. So what we find sometimes is that we have to send the RFP to 20 or, hopefully not more than 20 venues, but we have to because the availability isn't there. So, and it wastes our time if we only send it to 5 and all of them decline. So for us, we're putting a wide net out there, but it's because we're seeing availability not really there. That's why I'm constantly marking in their flexible dates, because then we can have that conversation with them. So like, okay, maybe the check-in date isn't Monday, but it's Tuesday. And maybe the pattern could shift by a day. And sometimes companies can be flexible with that and sometimes they can't. But at least if we're marking it in there, that could be something that is discussed.
Yeah, it seems like with the challenges of availability, more companies are opening themselves up to flexibility, right? Whether that's, a stay pattern or types of venues that they haven't worked with in the past and that kind of thing.
Yeah. It just depends on your event size too, right? Like you're going to have more options for a smaller program. For the bigger ones with, room blocks over 1,000 or 2,500 rooms a night, like for a citywide type thing, you obviously need to send that a lot earlier, and there's not potentially enough space. So it depends on like your booking cycle. What I would recommend to the planners out there is like look at all your event sizes and make sure that for your smaller events, maybe your booking window is smaller, but for your bigger events, you need to be looking at an 18+ booking cycle for those big events that you have versus like the 9-month cycle that sometimes these companies spring on us. And I think that's easier said than done, depending on your leadership team. Sometimes they need to wait to see what their financials are before they want to host the event. A lot of companies are dealing with that right now too. So we're in this ebb and flow mode. And I know we've done this dance before, but I think that if each side is just understanding that it is this dance and upfront with the challenges they're having, I think it will be helpful for everybody and save you time, right? Because if you're just upfront and say, hey, short booking window, we're just looking for this, but here's what we could be flexible with, then it helps the hotels be able to respond better.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you put in some basics into your RFP and then you attach additional information. I have heard that on our roadmap, potentially something that will be announced around Cvent Connect is our favorite buzzword, AI, a capability to essentially upload something like your function requirements, and then it would automatically populate into that function grid in the RFP, which I know would be music to a lot of our venue partners' ears as well as our planners, because ultimately that function grid is so important, but it can be tedious to fill out, but that's how a property is going to be able to look at their availability, and we may have integrations with their in-house systems to be able to determine that availability. So our hope is to, bring that data together, right, to help enable those responses.
That's awesome. Love it. I'm all here for AI and making everyone's life easier. That's going to save us so much time.
Awesome.
I completely agree. When is that happening?
No one on product on this call, so but on that, so function requirements, event design, let's start to talk about building out the floor plan. So first of all, when you're choosing your property, maybe you've determined availability, how does the floor plans or diagrams weigh into your decision? And then, next we'll move into like actually designing out the event.
Yeah, I think that has a huge impact when you're choosing your specific venue. I know that we always have to go by square footage. So when you're really looking for that specific venue, you want to put in that square footage minimum, and that will really help you narrow down what venues will be able to hold your event. And then at least for our venue diagramming and specifically that 3D floor plan, interactive floor plans, I think it's a great tool that helps a lot with collaboration because you can really use that tool throughout the entire process. I mean, you start with submitting the RFP, you see the floor plans in there, you know that you can interact with them. And then throughout the whole booking process, when you are talking to AV and your entertainers, and even down to nitty gritty details like talking to the fire marshal and getting those floor plans approved. So if you have this tool that you can collaborate with everyone, that's easily shareable, you're easily able to loop in all those different vendors, make that different shared workspace of sorts, and you don't have to worry about a version history and did I send you the correct version, or is this an old one, is this a new one? You can just have those real-time updates, which I think is very convenient. Things don't get missed, nothing gets forgotten, things like that.
Yeah. So it sounds like, exploring the floor plans at a high level is important during the decision-making process and being able to kind of visualize the space, look at those in 3D. But then what's great is to continue to iterate on, those floor plans to build out your diagram as you get closer to the event. You're planning out, everything from AV to other vendors and that kind of thing.
We're using 3D things right now, like just in our event, like Kirsten, we were just on an event design meeting last week talking about Cvent Connect, and someone was bringing up like, I don't know what corner you're talking about, and so we were like, let's click into the 3D, and so we go into the 3D and we like are literally marking it. Yeah, we're annotating it in the Zoom meeting, and like we're all on the same page because we can see that 3D. Even though we've been to the venue, we've taken pictures, etc. There's stuff that you forget. You're like, I didn't know I needed to take a picture of the trash cans, right? And that's a real thing. Like we had that issue because we're doing some stuff with sustainability at Cvent Connect. So we were like, what is this? We go in and look at the 3D, and it saves so much time, because otherwise, if you don't have that, if venues don't have it, then you're calling the CSM that you're working with. You're calling them and saying, hey, I'm so sorry. Can you please go measure this for us? Or can you please go do this? And like, it sounds weird for venues, but like, if you don't have measurements, just basic measurements of walls and like egress amounts, like readily available to us, it makes it so much harder for us to do our jobs and plan a successful event in your venue. So the 3D the pictures and the tours are super helpful for us in the ideation phase, right? And then you move into the actual floor planning, right? When you've awarded the business already, you're already working with them. But even after, like, I know 3D is great, then you don't have to do a site visit, you go in the 3D. But even after you've awarded the business, we're still using it daily to talk through it with people, because most people may not be able to afford even a site visit. So we're lucky enough to send a few people, and we had some local people for one of our events, so we were able to send a lot of people, but there's still 20 other people that we need to inform on where things go, and plus your vendors, right? So it's like having that also in the planning mix is super helpful.
Yeah, I don't know that we realize, we like think about that as much. It's like there's one site tour, right? But then there's so many other use cases where you need to like re-reference what the space is going to look like. And I don't think a lot of properties know that. I mean, we have, social tables, or now Cvent event diagramming is probably one of the most widely used diagramming tools out there, but it's not just for the venues that license it. When you're a customer of our diagramming product and our 3D diagramming product, every single planner in our ecosystem can also access those floor plans in 2D and 3D and do what you were just describing, Rachel, which is go back and reference them as part of your planning process. So guess what? You're not having to call the property to send you a picture of a trash can. Right? I think you were going to say something, Kirsten.
Yeah, I was just going to mention it's really been helpful too on the sponsorship aspect. As Rachel was saying, not everyone can do a site visit. So when we're talking to sponsors about different things that they're able to sponsor on site, instead of, just sending them a photo or something like that, you can actually send them the interactive map, show them, this is where attendees are going to be walking up. This is what they're going to see. This is what they're going to experience. And you can kind of really like sell it a little bit better than just sending them a picture and saying, here you go. Here's your space for this sustainability trash can, and kind of going from there. So I think it's also been really helpful for sponsors too, especially for Cvent Connect.
That's awesome. Let's just see if we can say trash can a couple more times in this webinar. How about that?
Love it. If you're going
to it's hugely important, right? Recycling and food waste. So, if you haven't registered for Cvent Connect, register now. You will see some of the coolest trash cans you've ever seen.
You really will. Be on the lookout.
I think more than that, like beyond that for venue diagramming too, is just keeping all our vendors on the same page, because I can't tell you the number, like before we had a diagramming or before we had social tables, we just described to them what we wanted, and we go on Pinterest and we'd be like, kind of like this, but like without this wall in Microsoft Paint or something. Like, and it's like, now we can actually put it into the diagram and say, this is exactly where I want it. This is the exact specs that I want. Here are the exact number of high boys I want around it. Right. And so then everybody can see it, and it's a live link, and people can go in there, and it's a game changer. It literally, like, it makes your program so much better. Because I can't tell you, and I'm sure planners on the call can commiserate with this, I can't tell me how many times I've seen a floor plan that the venue sent, then you show up and then your vendors are setting it up in a different way. And then you have concerns with like fire marshal, or you have concerns with a sponsor that thought they were supposed to be in that space. And it's like, if everyone's looking at the same map, like Kirsten said, just makes the process so much better, and it makes your event more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Let's pivot on to room block management. So, Rachel, tell us a little bit about your experiences in managing room blocks manually, and then when you started using Passkey, what changed?
My life changed drastically. I gotta say, like, I don't know if anyone can commiserate with this, but I think room block management is my least favorite thing that I have to do in my job. And so anything that can help make it less painful, I am all about. Even before we had Passkey, I was telling Janine, like, I was begging for something to help me, because I hate doing a rooming list in Excel with a passion. Like, I hate it. It takes up so much time. It's so manual. And it's so hard. And the biggest thing is not doing the Excel. The biggest thing is all the emails and texts and phone calls you get with the special requests. So, for me, the time savings alone with having a tool like Passkey to just manage the attendee experience better has helped. It helps me. It helps the attendees be like, I just want to tell you what kind of room I want. I want to tell you if I want non-smoking or smoking. I want to tell you that I need ADA. I want to tell you that I need a humidifier in the room. And all of those things are so personal. Like, I don't need to know that directly. But Passkey can. And so when we're looking at hotels, when I'm sourcing, I am asking them if they're using Passkey. And if they aren't, then obviously, like, we will use our own instance of it, because it's that important to our attendee process. It just helps significantly for the way that we do work. And so, going from managing this massive Excel, and it can go, I know, Janine, we want to talk about like different types of events. Obviously, for a room block of 10 people, you could probably manage that. But when you have more than that, when you have more attendees, you need to be thinking about how to automate it for them. Because if you're a really busy planner, maybe you're a team of one, maybe you're a team of two, and you don't have the money to outsource to someone else, like having Passkey do the work for you is so much better.
Well, glad to hear it. So yeah, let's talk about those different types of events, because as we talked about earlier, you guys do 1,000 events. Some of them have room blocks, some of them they don't, multi-hotel, single hotel. So for the lion's share of the events that are probably single hotel, it sounds like it is beneficial to you to work with a property that is using a tool like Passkey or Passkey itself, because that takes things off of your plate in terms of managing one-off requests, right? Humidifiers, room, classifications, a couple extra days on one end or the other. Tell us a little bit more about that. And also, when you're looking at those stay patterns, how you might, use that to then further curate the event design.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the simple event, right? An event where you have maybe one or two different block types. Maybe you have your own staff and then your just general attendee type. For me, yeah, you could do it in Excel. Like, let's say it's 100 people. You're like, no big deal. But in terms of time savings, I was trying to think back, like when I did room blocks without passkey, I would spend 1 to 2 hours a week just going through emails, a day, not week, 1 to 2 hours a day going through emails and making sure that the Excel was up to date and making sure that we were tracking okay. And making sure that the people had what they requested. But there's so much uncertainty on the attendee side that they are calling you, they're emailing you, they're texting you, they're like stalking you to get a hotel confirmation. And for me, it's just having passkey, having one link that directly goes into the hotel system to request those things is way better. Let's say, for example, your small event, let's say you're paying for your attendees' hotel rooms. Or you're only paying for one night and the rest of them is on them. That helps you just put the credit card information directly in there, and then they can book on their own through passkey and then stay as long or as little as they like on the pre and post nights, and you not have to worry about doing all of that for them. So those are like the more simple events that you can just have that link and book directly into the system. For a larger event, I would not be able to do rooming for a citywide if I did not use this kind of technology. Sure, you can outsource to a third-party hotel housing management company, but they're usually using some sort of technology to help them as well. For a citywide, it is absolutely imperative that you use it. So for Cvent Connect, for example, we have 17 different hotels. And then within each of those hotels, we have 4 to 7 sub blocks. And then like within those sub blocks, we have different types of billing notes. So if you do the math, it's like 125 different ways of like around that number, 125 different ways that people can book hotels or request different things, or they're in the different attendee category. I think I would quit if I had to do that in Excel. I don't think anybody should be doing that. And so for me, it's like that's a way that I'm looking at it. The other thing that's huge for me is if I was doing it in Excel, I would have to be spending tons of time on automated reports and alerts, and I would be doing so much math on a daily basis, categorizing how we're tracking towards attrition. With passkey, it's not. I get a weekly email. Actually, you can get it as often as I want. I want them weekly. So I get an automated report weekly that shows me my pickup by every sub block and then by every total just block. So by different attendee types. And I get alerts when it says that, oh, this block is almost full. Would you like to shift inventory from one room or from one block to another? So it's just less guesswork and more actual data. So, just the other day, I got a pickup report that's like, this hotel's at 56%. This hotel's at 71% booked. And so, and then I have a tracking sheet, right, of all the hotels and what the attrition number is, what the room block cutoff date is, and what we need to hit by when. And so I have those alerts set for me, doing the work literally for me. So while I would have spent 2 hours a day doing this manual work, now I'm spending probably like an hour a week looking at the reports and making sure we have enough inventory and that we're tracking to goal, and that there's no, obviously there's fire drills and escalations that you need to also manage, but most of it is handled through the system.
Yeah. So from about 10 hours a week, it sounds like, to 1 hour a week max in terms of, avoiding a bunch of Excel work. And correct me if I'm wrong, you probably have to be calling the hotel to get your pickup reports, or the 17 hotels. which then that's also manual work on their end to run those reports and send them to you.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. There's a lot of like back and forth manual work and manual comparison and things like that you would have to do if you didn't use this. I think it's a must have for these larger events that you're doing. And even for the smaller ones, I think it's a must have. I think it just saves so much time and effort for planners to be able to do that. Even if it's like, it just saves so much time.
Yeah, I mean, for the the smaller events, there might be 6 events going on at any one time, right? So even though each one individually might be easier to manually manage, that adds up. And
Right.
another piece about the manual process, so on the hotel side, I mean, there have been a lot of security breaches in the news, like a lot of concern around, in general, just the downloading, saving, emailing of attendee data, certainly credit card data. So, I think that having the integrations that we're talking about here through, room inventory is really critical so that you can substantially reduce the circumstances through which you would need to email someone's PII to somewhere else, right? And email retention policies, right? Like that's sitting in their email for 7 years.
Right.
It's definitely not ideal. It's raising a lot of concerns from what we've heard, on the hotel side of the business and probably on the corporation side too.
Well, credit card information too is a big thing. Like having that be very, encrypted and then sent directly through the system is way better. Like I remember before technology, we would just send it in Excel to the hotel. It's like, this can't be right. Like this can't be the way that we're giving this information to the hotels. It's like a huge data issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say the other thing I really like about Passkey is that it's tied to registration. So we can pull reports from registration and Passkey. We know who hasn't booked a room yet. You can send out automated emails like a couple weeks before your room block cutoff date and remind people to book and make sure you're tracking there. I think the one thing that's really not in our kind of list of questions that I think is also unique is knowing your economic impact in a city. And being able to keep track of how many room nights you brought to a city. And then, when you're doing your RFP and telling them, hey, we booked this many rooms, if you don't use Passkey or people are booking outside the system in all these different hotels and you're not in a system, let's say it's through like 8 different booking links of courtesy blocks at hotels. Sure, you could pull all of those Excels and put them together and try to do that. But with Passkey, you know exactly where they booked, which block they booked in, the duration they stayed, and you know that economic impact that you brought to the city. I know DMOs and CVBs would love that data because they would love to see how big your event is and how much business you're bringing into the city overall.
Yeah. And what about when it comes to those, higher quantity of simpler events, right? Like, do you kind of pull that together and say, yeah, across these 500 events, we did this many room nights, in all these different cities, and then kind of bring that back to your maybe it's your chain partners or maybe your DMO partners to look at the economic impact of multiple events that you do with those
of course
destinations.
Yeah, the smaller ones are a little different because some don't have room blocks, but yeah, the ones that do have room blocks we'll look at across the board and say this is how many we have total. I think where we're getting a lot better is for our internal programs and the amount of people flying in for things like that, making sure that we're tracking that better. To have that data for the hotels around our offices to make sure that they know how much event business, group business we're bringing in versus our transient travelers.
Yeah. Okay. Back to you, Kirsten, is there any other technology that you would say is crucial in collaborating with your venue partners, your other vendor partners?
So I think everything really that we mentioned today is key. I think all of them, especially working together throughout the full life cycle of the events, is just really crucial to us. And anything that we can do to really cut down on our time that it takes to do things or potential mistakes that are going to happen, I think is great. So I think what we have is fantastic. I think any updates, like you mentioned, one of those coming up soon are going to be great for us. But yeah, I think we're in a really good spot, especially as event planners, and definitely much better than, like Rachel said, back in the day, that we'll call it, when we just had to do everything manually via Excel sheet or fax machine, if we want to keep going back even further. But yeah, I think our new technology is just really, really great for us.
I've been in the industry 2 decades. I've definitely faxed the contract before. So yeah, it's like, Janine, there's a lot of other products obviously that we use. Like we use registration really heavily, especially for guarantees at hotels. We use our survey product to make sure that we're asking folks about their experiences at venues, their experience at the event overall. And a lot of times we'll share that with the property afterwards and say, hey, here's what the good, bad, the ugly, if you want to hear it. We use that stuff. We also use tracking on site. So for our bigger events, we do RFID data, which is very interesting for me and Kirsten year over year, because we can see, okay, this many people came to an event, this meal. We don't need to guarantee as much next year. We can plan for XYZ. Like we just keep a record of all of this stuff so that the RFPs that we're sending get better and better every year, more accurate. And we can give even more data to the hotels to make sure that, or special event venues to make sure that we're having the best experience, right? For both, on both sides, because from a sustainability standpoint, we don't want to make 1,000 extra plates of food if only 500 people are coming. And so we're tracking that closely. We're giving those reports. Like the other day for San Antonio, I sent them just like a portal that they can log in and look at these reports on whenever they want, so they can just like see it. So there's a lot of ways that we're like cross collaborating together with the people that the venues that we're working with to ensure that we're both in the know. They feel like they're part of the program as well. They feel like, because the success of our program is their success as well.
Yeah. And that's something that, inspires me every day working in this industry and working for Cvent, is that, all of the technology that we use, or so much of it, is used by multiple stakeholders within the events ecosystem, right? Like this isn't a planner tool or a hotel tool or a venue tool. We have really made big efforts to create tools that all sides of our landscape can work together within. And I think that that's something, not a lot of technology companies have been able to do effectively, but is kind of one of the great parts about, the Cvent ecosystem. And all of you here watching on the webinar that come from different parts of this industry and different backgrounds. Now, we've touched on a lot of great technologies today. If you'd like to earn a $100 Amazon gift card, please sign up to complete a demo with us. We'll go ahead and pop that link in the chat right now. To any recipients outside the US, the gift card can be converted from USD to another currency of your choosing. So that is a great opportunity to double click into any of the technologies that you heard about today, or anything else you'd like to learn about in handling your event technology. We also have mentioned it a couple times. The Super Bowl of events is coming up here in June. If you don't know, Cvent Connect is our go-to annual event for event professionals, marketers, and hospitality experts. So please feel free to check out our agenda, one of which is a lot of information about the roadmap. We did a few previews today with some enhancements that are coming soon, but there are hundreds of others that you can learn about at Cvent Connect, along with, amazing networking and sharing of ideas with your colleagues in the industry. It is such a powerful event. I love attending it every year, and I get so inspired. So please join us there at Cvent Connect, in person or virtually. We also dropped that link into the chat. So thank you to our panelists, Kirsten and Rachel. We really enjoyed the insights that you had for us today. Thank you to all of our attendees. We hope that you found this webinar helpful. This is the end of the actual presentation. If you have to jump, thank you for attending, but we're also going to stick around and write answers to any questions that you may have in the chat and the Q&A section to your right. All right, cheers everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.